The one guy he felt Marvel didn't think would leave.
We were going to have the meeting with the publisher the next morning. I happened to run into, at an auction, there was some art auction going on, I run into Jim Lee.
The Sotheby's auction?
Yeah. So I talked to Jim Lee, and he goes, hey, what are you doing in town? And I give him the spiel. I tell him what we're about to do. I'm a pretty good salesman, right? So I get the gift of gab. I give it to him, and he says, fairly shortly, I'm in. It was a big moment. Jim Lee coming, I've said, was really a crucial moment because he was the guy that Marvel hadn't lost favor with. Rob and I were like rebels. So they were like, the nasty boys are going, so what? But the church choir boy, which is Jim Lee, if he can go, anybody could go.
Todd McFarlane always points out.
He's got the best stories.
He's got the best stories, usually
got the best memory.
Usually at your expense.
Yes.
But he's always quick to point out that you were the key, the linchpin to getting the Image thing off the ground. Rob was still there, but Marvel already knew that they were kind of like the bad boys.
Todd likes to refer to himself. They were the troublemakers.
They were the troublemakers.
They were.
But you were the linchpin to make this happen.
Sure.
They needed you on board.
Everybody was just excited. We got Jim.
What a bomb it was.
And especially Todd. We got Jim Lee.
We start off Jim Lee's
Marvel and DC are screwed. He used a different word. I don't know where this is airing, so it was a bomb. It was Jim jumping ship. Suddenly everybody's going to pay attention.
Lee talking about leaving Marvel and starting Image. Now, it was a big moment in comic books, and this sort of Marvel X-Men collection kind of epitomizes how these publishing companies really took advantage of these artists. They commissioned Jim to do this art on X-Men, which they used for a line of comic book cards, which, sold, thousands of card sets. And then they, published this 3-issue gallery of Jim Lee's artwork, which they own. They even put Jim Lee's name on it. And again, continue to profit off his work and his name, and continue to use that work to brand X-Men and brand Marvel content. So you can kind of see the frustration that really all the artists leading up to this sort of departure, we're talking about the Kirbys of the world, we're talking about the Bill Fingers of the world, where artists, they create something and then they don't see a dime at the end of the day. The company uses it to really build and make profit off their work. So again, a seismic shift in terms of the industry. Now, over at Image, artists had more control in what they were creating. They were getting a share of the profit. They were getting a share of the licensing from toys and other, types of agreements, business agreements. So that's initially this revolution that these guys at Image started. They amassed an incredible amount of market share because of the sort of the way they left Marvel, and the way they promoted themselves. Just a bunch of young guys with sort of like, they were the kings of comic books at the time. And what a time to be collecting. I will just remember going to my LCS and picking up as many titles of Image, especially Jim Lee's work, Todd McFarlane's work, just picking up all these great new stories, new characters, and really a faster pace in terms of the panel work. Definitely more daring in terms of the storytelling and some of the darker storylines that Image had compared to their DC and Marvel counterparts. So it was just a very innovative, creative time for comic books, and just absolute bomb and revolution. Now, Jim Lee comes and does some of his most innovative work in comic books during this WildStorm era. He introduces all original creations. We begin here with Wildcats #1 in 1992. This is really the start of Image and the dawn of the modern age. We get so many great characters here with Zealot, Grifter, Imp. I mean, just a great team concept. Really sort of, kind of combining a lot of elements of the X-Men, sort of other elements that are unique to this world. But one thing that's very consistent is the quality of the character work, the design of the weapons and the costumes, just all great, wonderful stuff here. And what makes me excited about the DCU is the prospect of these 90s characters coming to and being integrated into the DC universe, which I'm very looking forward to, and I hope happens if James Gunn is watching. Next we get this great 90s prismatic foil cover. It's the first one of its kind in comic books. And again, Marvel, DC, and Image are all sort of in this mini competition to sell books and get market share, with, each one trying to outdo each other with holographic covers, die-cut covers. I mean, you name it, it came out in the 90s, right? It was perfected in the 90s. Comic book polybags here on Wildcats #4. You had comic books within comic books. You had, low print variant covers coming out. So it was just a fun time to be collecting comic books. Here we got another great cover, Wildcats #5, Wildcats #8 here. Here's another great cover, Wildcats #10. Love this Zealot cover there. She was such an incredible character design, and I can't wait to see her, some form of her come to the big screen. I think that would just be incredible to see Zealot on the big screen. Issue #11 and issue #12 here. And really, one of my favorite cover in this run is the iconic Grifter run. Grifter is another guy where the character design is just incredible. You have a guy with a handkerchief as his mask, and then he's toting the double guns, the double pistols. Just incredible work. So now we're going to listen to Jim talk about, he kind of outlines what the problems were at Marvel, and again, talking about what WildStorm is up to in the mid-90s.
I think in '89, me, Scott Williams, and Will Spertasio, we all, we were working for Marvel at the time. We decided we were tired of working by ourselves in isolation and not having anyone to talk to and getting any sort of feedback on our work. And so we rented a small one-bedroom apartment. It was tiny, and we were all in the living room, crammed there. And those are really, fun times. And quickly, we hired an assistant to help out Scott Williams, and we had piled up all of these comics, and we moved into a two-bedroom place. And then we moved from a two-bedroom place into a 2,000 square foot office space. We finally took the plunge and signed a lease. And then we moved, that got too small as Mark Silvestri came and joined, and Mike Heisler and Joe Chido. So we moved down the hallway into like 4,500 square feet. And then we hired, that's when Image really started getting rolling. We hired more personnel to help get the books out on time, or at least more smoothly. And
all the projects
we brought in other young artists from around the country. And then, so we're actually at maximum capacity right here.
Again,
and we're going to probably get about
productive
12,000 square feet elsewhere now. So we're really,
for the company.
it's really come a long way in a short period of time.
But it also, I think, portends to some of the issues that would probably spell trouble for the company as well. So again, Comic Boom goes bust as sales start to decline in 1995. So you had two sort of really bad trends. One is the company was investing a lot to meet a certain amount of market output, hiring all these artists, and just growing, investing in the facilities and space. That probably wasn't the best thing to do in light of, again, a Comic Boom bust that was on the horizon. But who would have predicted that, right? No one foresaw that. But of course, those two things don't mix when you have impending lower sales with a lot of investment that's gone into the company. So just showcasing again some of the great work that was coming out of WildStorm at the time. Gen 13 number 7, Darker Image number 1, showcasing here Death Below. Death Below is really sort of Punisher on steroids, right? We have Stormwatch, great team, another great sort of superhero team. We have great Death Blow number 1 cover here, the red cover. We even have this run on Deathmate here, sort of crossover with Valiant Comics, which is another independent publisher, just kind of starting out as well. So again, you have a lot of sort of the independent publishers coming to the fore now. You have Marvel and DC sort of creating in more adult-oriented books, an adult-oriented line. You have Vertigo coming out from DC there, putting out a lot of great stuff. So 90s was definitely one of the most innovative periods, probably the most innovative period in comic books in terms of content, in terms of more players in the industry, and really growing the industry to what it's become today. Just a very diverse series of narratives and different categorical sort of audience targeted content. A lot more diversity now in terms of creators and the types of titles that audiences want. So again, Kindred number 3 here. We end on really all these covers are so just amazing. I think what gets lost in this mass-produced stage is the quality of work that was coming out, or especially in the early days of Image. There was so much that Jim Lee was doing, where he was working on the books and doing a lot of the art to again get the company off the ground. But then, come the mid-90s, as sales were declining, Jim Lee kind of jumped ship and decides to go back to Marvel. I'm going to end the WildStorm age with this very interesting Wizard Jim Lee Tribute Edition in 96, just paying sort of homage to Jim Lee's career up to this point, and all the great work he was doing at Image and through WildStorm. But again, like I said, I think Jim kind of starts to see the writing on the wall, and he inks a deal to come back to Marvel to do a run there on Fantastic Four and some other titles there, artwork. About highly publicized at the time, but I think along with that highly publicized return, that was met with also just lower sales across the entire market for comic books. So again, that sort of highly anticipated book and work on Marvel did not really translate to high sales or revenue for either company. So that kind of starts the end of this arc. Now we're going to enter Jim Lee's Blue period. And the Blue period is, I call it the Blue period because it's probably, I don't want to speak for Jim, but in my opinion, just looking at the kind of the quality of work that was coming out, and again, Jim wasn't putting out anything, wasn't putting out too much during the Blue period that was his own, because again, he was just so busy on the business management side, just running the company, that he got, again, the great staff there at WildStorm doing a lot of the work for him and attributing his name onto it. But that's not quite the same. I think fans can see through that. They can see that, this says Jim Lee, but it doesn't reflect the quality and the dynamic art that we associate with his work. So those things were going on, and that's what we're going to get into kind of now as we end the WildStorm period. Really, again, Jim's probably most innovative, creative era, but unfortunately it was a precursor to the comic boom bust that would come, and really would force the industry to consolidate. So that's what we're in now. We're going to talk about Jim Lee's Blue period, which is a period I want to say is from 1996 to 2002. Around 96 is when we really start to see the bubble burst and the repercussions from that. Obviously, WildStorm, their sales are declining. Not just WildStorm, but everybody, right? Marvel, DC, everybody's seeing declining sales. Just one of those events where the market really grew too fast and couldn't sustain itself, and people who were buying comic books for the wrong reasons, speculating on these things as future investments, realized pretty quickly that nothing was going to come about having these 90s books. One of the cool things about the Blue period is this collaboration with Neil Adams on Wildcats X-Men, a really interesting Image Marvel crossover event. But this is the first time Neil and Jim work on a comic book together, so I love both artists. I think both artists have so much in common. You can check out my previous videos where I really expand on that, but these books are special to me because it marks the first time they officially collaborate, and they do so both on two variant covers here, a Neil version and a Jim Lee version, and then they also integrate their artwork on the interiors as well. So great issue. Again, I just picked up the 200th issue where it's the Jim Lee version, and I'll show that off later. Next we have Divine Right #1 is a variant cover, just a great cover here, kind of what Jim Lee does best. And like I mentioned, I showed Winona Earp #1. Here's another great artist, another great cover by Jim, Wildcats #32, an embattled zealot here on the cover, and this kind of epitomizes, I think, Jim Lee at this point at WildStorm, just weathering the storm as long as he could, and then ultimately making a decision for his company, all the employees it employed, and just selling the company to DC, getting absorbed DC, because DC had the resources to really purchase all that, and DC really was purchasing this content, right? The creative aspect of the ownership of these characters and these stories, and which they've continued to integrate into their business model with the WildStorm stuff. So It'll be interesting to see if DC brings WildStorm content to the cinematic universe. But anyway, focusing on this Fantastic Four run that Jim came back to Marvel for, he brought his childhood friend, Brandon Choi, to be the writer on this. And again, I think it's a great piece of work in terms of the artwork. I wouldn't necessarily say it's the best written piece, but I think some of those criticisms in terms of like the story and not having that cohesion or really real direction, compelling direction, is fair. And anyway, the timing of it was bad. It was pretty much launched as the industry was dealing with, just lower sales across the board. And highly anticipated, highly promoted, but ultimately did not do so well in terms of engagement and sales. So, but I will say that this art here, Jim's take on the Fantastic Four, and here, him drawing this battle with the Thing and Namor, man, this kind of work is just incredible to look at. Here we have a great, beautiful cover of the Fantastic Four and Black Panther. I just remember when I saw these images, they're promoting, I think, the Fantastic Four #1 with the team there and Jim Lee's art. I was so stoked for it, and really it brought back those memories of X-Men 1 but unfortunately it didn't have that impact, and but we got a lot of great artwork here, both internal and the covers on this sort of short run. So yeah, got X-Men 4, 5, 6 and this great Thing cover, Smoking the Cigar on number 10, and Jim Lee, the quality that we associate with Jim Lee. So again, he does this cover here on Avengers. Again, how often do we get to see Jim do Thor or Iron Man? It's one of these instances here, or even Cap. Jim Lee comes back and does Cap here on 2 covers. A real treat, because we don't oftentimes get to see, again, this kind of character work. But we'll continue on. I do want to say that some of the stuff at WildStorm, Jim Lee kind of took himself off books. He was more sort of attributing himself, his name on books like that. Winona Warp number 1 is a great example. He's attributed with the cover, but the artwork is not his, obviously, and the quality drops off. So okay, he sells WildStorm to DC, and he comes back and he does some covers for DC. But as you can see, none of these are inked by Scott Williams. They're inked by different artists, and doesn't have that same sort of dynamic style that we're used to. So it really kind of just feels like a low point for Jim, having to just kind of go back to square one, from being this owner of this company to now going back to DC as an artist and just contributing to covers and kind of doing the thing he was doing at Marvel. I'm sure it was not the best feeling for him, but at the same time, his passion is comic books. This is what he's been doing since he was a young boy. So I kind of look at it as maybe cathartic to just literally get back to the drawing board, right? And start from square one again at DC, and just really help focus DC to kind of navigate this, post bubble burst environment. And DC was having a lot of success. So what we're going to do now is we're going to kind of take a look at one last final work that I think represents a show of things to come, and basically Jim Lee's career at DC really takes off, and we're going to cover the DC era, really sort of the first part of DC era, and then the second part, which is the current. But we're going to take you out with this Thundercats #2, where Jim Lee, kind of one of the last things he does for WildStorm. This is obviously WildStorm under DC, but they own the licensing to Thundercats, so Jim Lee comes back and does this amazing Lion-O cover, and it kind of previews, or at least communicates Jim is back with Scott Williams. That quality is there again, and we're going to see more of it in the DC era. So stay tuned for that.